Hello everybody, welcome to a very smoky live stream. We're gonna make some art while it's too smoky out there to ride, and hopefully some of you guys will join us. If you can hear me okay, let me know in the comments if it's looking and sounding okay. All right, so why am I doing this? You know, like many of you in the West Coast, you're probably stuck under some pretty toxic smoke. As I speak, looking outside, there's a big kind of wafting toxic gray cloud coming over from the fires in Oregon and California. So totally bummed, can't ride, but we can still be productive with the time, do something bike related, and make some art. All right, so David Person says, sounding okay, hopefully. All right, Richard Ingram, thanks for the heads up. So you guys know I like to do watercolors. I'll show you my setup real quick, and I'm going to admit that I'm a little rusty. Have not fiddled with the watercolors in a little bit, mostly because it's been nice outside, and when it's nice outside, you want to ride bikes. But just to give you guys a quick overview of what everything looks like, I've got a sheet of arches here, or arche, depending on how you want to pronounce it, a collection of brushes, and currently using a Holbein palette here. A little water bucket off camera, and you can see everything here is very complex. We've got a video switcher. This allows me to do all this fancy stuff, and yeah, should be a fun time. I think, so you guys would have noticed in the title that we're going to paint some images using the photographs from a photographer based out in Brooklyn, New York, I believe, and his name is Donald Ray. So I'm going to bring up his Instagram here because this is 2020, and that's just what we do. Let's bring him up. Donald Ray. And I don't know too much about him except for that he takes pretty awesome photos, and I've used them personally for reference. And I'll talk a little bit about why I like his photography. You know, a lot of it, he's got just a really nice style. It's very graphical. I'd say it lends itself to being interpreted as a painting really well, just because there's lots of really bold shapes in the painting, and yeah, it just makes for good paintings. So I know I've followed him for quite a while. He did a bike packing trip in Vermont recently, looks like with Joe Cruz and Ron, Ultra Romance. This is one I think I might try to paint today, and I think it makes a good one for a paint-along, just because it is a very strong graphical image. Not too complicated. We can break it down into kind of major shapes, but just to give you a sense of his style here. You know, you can see that he uses strong silhouettes a lot, which I'm a big fan of, just because it really simplifies the image making. But also lots of nice geometric composition. So here, you know, if you're a photographer, you see you get a nice kind of suggested S-curve here. There's this strong foreground object that bleeds into shadow cutting across the scene. And you know, something like this would make a great painting, because if you're talking in terms of values, like you could paint this dark foreground here and really drag it across and combine the cyclist. So you have like one really like a strong shape to work with. So this would have been my second choice to paint. It does get a little complicated in the trees, I was fiddling around to trying to simplify it, but wasn't that successful. But let's see what else we got here. As you can see, he's got a really cool style. I think he went to, did a haute route in Oman, maybe. There might be pictures there. I painted this one a while ago, and this one I love. I think this is his partner, Karen. Not quite sure where this is, but again, if you want to get into to watercolor and are looking for reference photos in cycling, Donald Ray is a great source. Another one is Rolf Smith. He's in the UK, but similar style, really strong kind of graphic images that lend themselves well to paintings. Let's see. So lots of good stuff in here. I think I'll show you how I use the gram, if you're interested. Typically, when I scroll through the gram, I will just bookmark photos that inspire me for whatever reason. Could be great examples of just watercolor styles that I want to emulate. This one I like because it's, he uses just varying tones of greens, can communicate the shadows, but everything's pretty simplified. Not drawing every single leaf, but they all kind of blur together and give a good sense of depth. And also it's a fly fishing photo. If you guys want to follow someone, a watercolor artist I really, really enjoy, it's this guy, Yang Hong Zong, number 9. He's based in Oregon. I want to say Lake Oswego, maybe, somewhere in Oregon. I know that he teaches some watercolor classes in the Portland area, also in Washington. He's doing a online series that starts on the 16th, and I totally would have signed up for it, but it's during times that just don't work for us. But 8-week course to paint with Yang Hong Zong. And one thing I love about him is, he just has such control of highlights. He uses Chinese brushes to great effect. You can see how with very minimal strokes he can get a tree in there, and it's almost like calligraphy, but still just like amazing control of highlights. And if you go to his gram, he's got lots of he's got some video tutorials like this one. Let's see if this will play. And it's just magic to watch. So please don't expect this on this live stream. It probably won't be like this. But if you're looking for other watercolor artists to check out, he's definitely one to check out. I mean, it's amazing when you watch him paint. It just looks like chaos, and then he pulls it all together. I think this is kind of his signature move here, like his shadows. He does a lot of purple and kind of gradients, but just a real master at protecting the highlights, which is really hard to do in watercolor. But you can see his other work. I think this is him. He might be, painting some of the wildfire smoke here. Just beautiful, beautiful work. Another Instagram watercolor artist that also ride bikes is this guy. I discovered him recently. His gram is Game Pencil, and he's actually based in the Philippines, but he does lots of plein air. You can see his setup here. You can see his bicycle in the foreground. It looks like a couple little portable palettes. So definitely a person after my own heart. I believe he even has a Brompton. Yeah, here's a shot of his studio, which is kind of cool. So, sweet. So I don't know if he's going to catch this, but big fan of your artwork. Again, much better artist than I, so, let's... I just want to temper your expectations. This is just more for funsies because it is smoky, and, what else is there to do outside? Okay, so if you're watching in the comments, let me know where you're watching from. I would love to hear hear where everyone is watching from, and we'll get started. I've got the nifty camcorder here. Oops, wrong way. I think this is the first time I've used this setup, so hopefully it works well. And I think what I'm going to paint is that one painting from Donald Ray. Let me bring it up, and we can, if you're inclined to paint along, please do. I think it's a good one for this format, just because it is kind of relatively simple shapes. All right, so we've got San Francisco in the house, and Maryland. Brian asks, does watercolor use a specific type of paper? Yes, you definitely want to use watercolor paper. 100% cotton, like the stuff. Some people call it Arches, some people call it Arche, but what's nice about it is it has a little bit of a tooth, so you can have some nice kind of texture, and it does kind of absorb the paper better. If you use just plain drawing paper, it just soaks through and it looks like a hot mess. So definitely want to use that. All right, David Parsons from Thousand Oaks. Howdy. From Seattle, another Seattle person. How bad is the smoke in Seattle? Is it as bad as it is in the Portland area? Let me know, super curious. So let's see if I can do this on the fly. I should have done this beforehand, apologies. But I'm gonna try to put this photo up as I paint, and we'll see if we can make that happen here. Okay, bam. All right, so that is going to be our reference photo. I'll click over to this camera over here. And again, if you're interested, it is on Donald Ray's gram. I'll bring it up one more time here. And again, I'm choosing this because it looks like a pretty simple one to do in terms of shapes. Bike related should be a good time. So back to here. Okay, man, this is tricky, juggling so much stuff. So PJ says it's pretty bad. That's a bummer. Yeah, it's getting pretty bad here. That's for sure. Okay, so I think I will position this over here, and all right, so let's get drawing. I'm gonna bring up this guy. Actually, I'll take my head off. You guys need to see my head. And I did ping Donald. I don't know if Donald is his full first name or if it's Donald. But I did ask him if I could use his photos for the live stream today, and he said yes. So that's how this happened. Okay, so I'm gonna, whoops, oh, start with a quick pencil sketch here. Sacramento looking bad. Yep, yep, very apocalyptic. Okay, all right, we got Ryan. Hey there, Ryan. Do you know Donald Ray by any chance? I think he's in your part of the country. So, okay. So first thing I see is this kind of S-curve in the road. So we'll try to communicate that here. And actually, I think I'm going to think about where I'm going to place the cyclist first. I should start there. So I want the cyclist to be roughly about here. No, don't know Donald. Okay. Got to make this a little bit bigger so I can see the reference. Oh, geez. Okay. So the cyclist will end up over here somewhere. And usually I like to keep the cyclist pretty minimal and just kind of suggest the figure. This will give me good starting points. Then the road will go over here, extend about this far. and come over here, and then we've got some kind of craggy rocks, other rocks here. A little too heavy-handed with that. And then the other side of the road looks like it goes like so. And then the rocks kind of jut upwards vertically, lots of craggy stuff. Again, not trying to be super literal. It's hard to top a photograph. So the goal isn't to paint the photograph, but to create something else and use the photograph as kind of inspiration here. So I'm just going to work on the cyclist a little bit more here. I found that one of the key parts when you're painting or drawing a cyclist is actually this gap between the arms. If you can nail that, I mean, you're almost all the way there, because that kind of communicates the position of the rider. You know, if they're riding drop bars or flats or alt bars, you know, all that can be communicated by that little gap. So there, we've got something that suggests a cyclist in very few strokes, and that's what we're going for here. There's kind of a leading line here, and then big shapes over here. Again, trying not to get too literal. And one of the real striking things about this photo, of course, is the clouds. So we do want to try to capture that, and they're pretty dark. And it just gives kind of a little point of reference there. Just refining the painting a little bit, or drawing a little bit. Aha! Wintering in California. That's a good strategy. All right. What else we got here? So rough drawing. I got I think the scale mostly there. He's leaning. No, he's just trying to cut off that. The cyclist is not going to fall off the cliff, I assure you. Just maximizing the gentle gradient, because as you know, if you're going up a steep climb, the grades are less steep on the outside edge and more steep on the inside edge. So this is a very wise cyclist just trying to minimize the gradient. Okay, so yeah, you've got a rough drawing. Here it is in the back. And I think we're ready to paint. Yes, he is indeed taking the supple route. All right. So I think what I'm going to do, the sky, looking at the sky, it's fairly cool, and the foreground elements are warm, so I like that contrast. One of the reasons I chose this painting. So it's going to be light blue grays through here, and kind of ochres and burnt siennas through here with some with some darker shapes. So clean off the palette. And I don't know if you guys are into palettes, but this is my current favorite one, of course, gravel specific. But this is made by Holbein, based in Japan, even though it has a German sounding name. And what's great about these is the wells are pretty big. So if you've got a bigger brush, you can go in there pretty easily. And lots of mixing areas. These ridges are fairly tall, so you can create a nice pool of paint if that's what you want to do. And yeah, just a ton of wells. You can also use it as a staining palette. It's got room for your thumb. And these are very hard to find. You'll find kind of knockoffs of these that are aluminum and enamel. The real deal is steel. I believe these are steel and enamel paint. So a little bit on the heavier side. And this one I got from an art store in Vermont. They're getting much harder to find in the United States. All right, so I think I'm actually going to paint the sky upside down a little bit, just to maintain the crisp lines here. How long before the paints dry out? Do you mean on the paper or in the wells? Typically, if you'll notice, with this kind of palette, you use 2 paint, and it takes about a day and a half to dry up into cakes, and you do want to do that. It just makes it a little bit easier to handle. And you just reactivate the paint by wetting it. Okay, and if I can get the palette in here too, we'll try. Edge of the palette is in here. So ultramarine blue, a little bit burnt sienna, again, classic combination to get you a gray. It's called Jane's Gray. And what's nice about those two is you can warm up the gray by adding more burnt sienna, or you can cool it down by adding more ultramarine. Make this a little bit wetter. Nice little pool here. The reason why I'm painting this upside down at the moment is you can see that texture that it leaves if you paint with the side of the brush. Just kind of suggest some clouds. Is to keep the bottom part keep the line to the road pretty clean so it doesn't bleed down by accident. Yeah, this is kind of just an initial wash, nothing too specific yet. And trying to keep good separation from the clouds here, and there you go. So I don't want to go super dark yet, but I do want to work on the clouds just a bit. Cool these off. As you can see, if you paint while it's still wet, you get a nice soft edge. And yeah, all right, so we've got the beginnings of the sky. What next? Let's see. All right. So, if you guys have any questions about anything, definitely let me know. Or if you have any questions about just bikes in general, this is kind of a free-form thing. Yeah. I've got, hopefully you guys caught the review of the All City Space Horse. Super fun bike. Cool to see its more modern iteration. Tuesday, we've got another bike review going up. It is the Vast A1 Magnesium, kind of super magnesium bike, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I think I'm going to paint this lower edge here, and you can see in the photo, there's I like it. It's on the lighter end of the value scale. It's also kind of warm, and same thing with here. So that's what we're going to do on this bottom edge. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Camcorders, man, they're freaking amazing. Okay, so I'm mixing up a pool of yellow ochre, also another separate pool of burnt sienna, and we'll alternate between the two. So and one important lesson I've learned in watercolors, you want to vary the color. You don't want just a plain field, otherwise it gets boring. So I might actually dab in some ultramarine here just to add a little more texture. Maybe the shadow side of some rocks. You can see that's a little bit more interesting than if it was just yellow ochre. So, pro tip. Okay, cover that space up. Let's cover this white. All right, it's pretty good. I think it looks a little bit more interesting. Again, the goal is not to paint the photo because the photo is already pretty awesome. Trying to add something different to the conversation, but using the photo as a reference. Okay, I think this is pretty dry, so I shouldn't lose my edge. I'm going to go in here and do a similar treatment, and then work on this road. And if you look at the road in the reference photo, it's actually pretty dark. So this is going to be fairly dark relative to the sky. I'd say almost, I think the sky is darker, but not by much. But again, I'm going to keep these rocks over here on the warm side. So again, pool of yellow ochre, and then the pool of burnt sienna. Gonna dip into the burnt sienna a little bit. Add some variation. And you can see by having like that base color of yellow ochre and then coming in with the burnt sienna, it gives a little bit more three-dimensionality. I think I want to make the values a little bit stronger at the edge. And I think, like on that one, I might actually go in and put just some cool spots while it's still kind of damp. Leave some gaps for the highlights of the rocks down here. And then, time for the road. What am I gonna do here? I think I'll mix up a pretty strong gray with ultramarine and burnt sienna. Once again, I might pre-wet it just a little bit, just so color runs a little bit more. Cool it off. There is an edge to kind of protect. It would be up around here. So this is just clean water in the brush, and I'm using that to kind of pull this color over, make it kind of blend in a little bit. Darkening this side a little bit more. Maybe a little streak down there just to give it some variation. And then I'm going to go really dark on the lower left edge, some indigo. But all right, so we're getting there. We are getting there. What to do now? Let's see. So if you guys have any questions, definitely ask away. Brian says, yes, my dad is an artist. You should look him up. He's actually a really good artist. I've got a very minute amount of his skill and talent, but I did pick up a couple things. So, all right. So what I'm seeing so far, one important concept is this idea of values and the difference between light and dark. And if you look at the reference photo, one of the darkest things is the clouds. So I'm going to go in and darken that up, and that acts as like a really nice frame to the painting. And then we're going to add some darker values in the rocks. And again, that will act to kind of start to frame the cyclist, and then we will paint the cyclist last. I'll probably go into the clouds a little bit, add more depth. But we're getting there. So let's see, which brush do I want? So many brushes. Okay. I think I will use this guy. So since the clouds are fairly dark, I think I'm going to go with indigo, which is, and if you can see here, but super, super dark value. Tend to like to use this for shadows and what have you. And I'm going to actually work with two brushes. So one brush is going to be loaded with paint, and the other brush is going to be just plain water. And I'm going to use the plain water brush to kind of soften the edge, because I do want the cloud to kind of fade in a little bit. So actually I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to pre-wet the edges of the clouds, and that'll kind of prevent a hard edge from forming. One thing that's nice about these clouds here is they form the top end of these rocks. So you get really good definition on over here. And I love that. I love using indigo instead of like a pure black, just because it does have a little bit of color of its own, and it's just more interesting than just a pure black, right? Because there's color, you can have variation, you can warm it up and mix in something like a burnt sienna. So again, see what's going on is I'm painting one brush with the paint, and then the other brush with the clear water to kind of soften the edges and pull down the paint. And watercolor, like one of the tricks is how you create depth, right? Because it's a 2D medium. In photography, you would create depth using things like depth of field, right? So like what's in focus, what's not in focus. You have kind of an equivalent of that in watercolor painting with your edges. So you can kind of suggest something further in the distance with softer edges. Okay, so we've got the very dramatic portion of the sky. It looks black in the video, but it's actually a very dark blue. And then I think I'll go in here. It's plain water. And start to dabble in some of the more distant clouds. And then over here. Like if you ever notice, like the further the clouds get, the flatter they become and more narrow. So that's kind of what I'm trying to suggest here. It's okay to use your fingers to blend. All right, so we've got kind of the sense of a receding cloud here. Blend this a little bit. And it's really easy to overwork the clouds, as you were seeing. So I think I'm not going to touch it anymore and just let that dry for a little bit. All right. So if you guys have any questions about the process, let me know, or about bikes in general. Am I wearing Crocs? I am not wearing Crocs at the moment. I did, however, I did that video on minimalist shoes, and you guys made lots of suggestions. I think Brian, you might have suggested what's it called? The Lone Peaks by it's not Merrill, by Ultra. And many of you have suggested that I try those, and I have actually tried those. When I first got into trail running a couple years ago, that was one of the shoes I started with, and they fulfill a lot of the criteria. They're lightweight, they're flexible, they've got really good lugs, so they do hold on to a bike, but they're not very durable, or at least not the ones I used. The iteration I had was when they were using a red mesh, and that really tended to tear really easily. Within a couple of weeks, both my shoes had holes in the big toe area. So yeah, so yes, I've tried Ultras. Not a fan for cycling, but for running, yes. A pair of shoes did come in from Astral. Their TR1, one of their shoes, but two of their shoes. The Low Jack, which is a pure water shoe, very minimal, and then they're kind of a hiking shoe. And of the two, I'm having better luck with the hiking sneaker. It's lightweight, has good lugs that work well with pedals. It's a little bit more robust than a trail running shoe because it is meant to be in the water and bang around rocks. So it's turning out to be pretty good. Okay, any tips for watercolor on the go? Yeah, there's lots of cool palettes. I'll go grab one real quick, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, so there's actually, hold on, let me grab a different one. So there's an Artist Toolkit, which makes the super small business card style palettes. Big fans of those if you're going ultralight. I like to use those if I'm testing out other colors that I haven't committed to yet. Another cool kind of palette that I use pretty often is this one. Again, gravel specific. And it is the portable painter palette. And what's cool about this is that comes together like so. And you can, hold on, where's my remote? Okay, as you can see here, it's got two kind of wells, and the way I like to use this is put brushes on one side and use the other for water, or you can put clean water on one side and dirty water on the other. And what's neat about, you'll notice this space, and this is designed so it rests on your knee. So you can post up on a rock, put this on your knee. Don't have to hold the palette. You can be holding your brush in the sketchbook. So this is a really cool palette. The only thing that's weird about these is these pans. They're smaller than normal, so you have to buy their pans specifically to work with this palette. You could just take the pans out completely and fill the hole, which I've done on a couple of these if you're really committed to the color. So this is a great kind of option here. Actually, put this back. Another cool one, which is the new in terms of portable watercolor palettes. This one's actually very, very inexpensive. I think this is like 20 bucks or 15 bucks, is this guy. Made by the same company. It's the Portable Painter Micro. So I filled this up with paints, but have not painted with it yet. But I'll show you what it looks like. So you open it up. I believe it's like this, yeah. And come on, how does this work? You can tell I've not used this as much as the other one. And here you go. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 4 little mixing wells. You could use this area to mix colors as well. I would use it for water. Only six little pans here, which is, you have to be very selective. But this is pretty cool. I've not actually painted with this yet. I bought it recently, meant to use it on some recent trips, but didn't pull it out because I think I got distracted by fishing instead. So this one I would check out. I don't know if I can recommend it yet. I don't know how usable it is, but it is it's pretty inexpensive. And again, it's made by the same company that does this one. So pretty cool option. All right, so I think we're dry here. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do now is work on the rocks. We'll get the rocks done, paint the cyclist, and then bam, we've got a little sketch. And I think this will go out to a Patreon supporter. We just had a new sign up at the watercolor support level. So if you sign up on Patreon, different perks. One of those perks is to get a watercolor sketch. And this will go to that person. Let's see, so Ryan asks, ACN in-person meetup happening anytime soon? Yeah, we talk about that a lot. At the end of every live stream, we hang out for additional like half hour, 40 minutes, shoot the breeze, talk about how the live stream went, but also future plans. And we definitely want to do that. It's just, Eric's in Canada, so he can't cross the border, we can't cross the border. So we'll have to see. We've talked about maybe meeting up at something like Sea Otter or doing a bike event together, which I think would be pretty fun. But we do want to meet up. I think the last conversation we had, we were talking about having both Eric and Mike come out here to Montana just because there's lots of riding possibilities. You can go mountain biking, ride the gravel, do bike packing, all from our front door. So that may happen in the future. Yeah, this is a cool, yeah, the portable painter is super cool. I actually have two of those big ones. That's how often I use it. Okay, so one of the concepts around painting is having a point of interest. You don't want to paint everything to the same level of detail because it distracts your eye. So you do want a concentrated area where things are in focus, if you will, using camera terminology, and everything else kind of recedes. So for this painting, my goal would be to have the point of interest be where the cyclist is and have everything recede from there. So far the clouds have been fairly suggestive. Again, the rock's not very literal, and I think I'm going to continue with that. So I'm going to pre-wet this group of rocks here and this part here, and go in again with some darker values to kind of suggest shadows and rocky structures, rather than painting, all these little tiny rocks. I mean, if you look at the reference photo, it just wouldn't be possible, right? There's just too much detail here, and if I attempted that, it would just kind of take away from the painting. So I'm going to do more of a suggestive approach on the corners, with the idea that it brings the viewer towards the cyclist. So another cool little handy dandy thing is a little spray bottle. Oops. So kind of pre-wet the paper a little bit, and that will allow me, when I do go in with some color, it'll soften it up, basically. And one thing we can do actually, which is a little fun, is finger paints. All right, so leaving some light colored gaps there, generally being darker in the foreground, again, acting as a frame for the rest of the painting. And I think that's what I'll do a similar approach on these rocks. See what we come up with. A little bit of randomness with the little paint tap, but I think it's a nice effect. Okay, got that a little bit damp. Trying to look at the reference photo here. Okay, some kind of so leaving some tops of rocks over there. And then again, just suggesting rocks. That was one of the trickier lessons to learn, is that, when you're painting, the point isn't to do a perfect representation of a photo or reality, because nothing's going to top reality, right? You want to have an interpretation. So this would be my interpretation of the scene. I'm going to blend in the road a little bit, bring in some of that darkness, from over here. Again, using the road to better define. It's a little too dark there. Leaving some streaks to suggest the grab. There we go. Okay, so getting there. Liking how it's looking. Much better than the first attempt I did at this. Okay, I might go in on some of the rocks here, try to really make some bold looking rock things. One cool technique that I've picked up from this one Japanese watercolor artist named, what's her name? Keiko Tanabe, is if you have a watercolor there, just tapping in clean water. And usually this would be seen as a mistake because it creates cauliflowers. But in this case, like, it actually adds texture. I'll show you what I mean here. So kind of just wherever the clean water hits, it just blooms a little bit. And usually you would want to avoid a bloom as a watercolor painter, but in this case, it's not a bad thing. Kind of creates some highlights on the fly. Okay, so looking pretty good. I think I'm going to add some darker values on this side. All right, so the goal has been to kind of bring the focus to the cyclist. I think it's looking pretty good. We've got a dramatic sky. I like how the sky here acts as it creates the top of the rocks. You still get a little bit of a pop of the rocks there. And yeah, so now just have to wait for things to dry adequately, and then we can paint the cyclist. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, Outback Whack, thanks for joining. Let's see, what else? Some interesting things coming down to the channel. I actually have the State All-Road, I forget what it, $700 gravel bike downstairs in the Cave of Bad Ideas. And en route this week is the Poseidon Redwood. I was originally going to do 2 bike review videos, 2 separate ones. But since review season is starting to run short because of smoke and impending winter, I think I'm going to do 1 video riding both of them back to back. Since they are in some ways very similar or would have the similar customer base, I think I'm going to do 1 video, try to ride them both on the same day, same terrain, and have that just be the final video. So should be pretty cool. Let me know what you guys think of the idea, or if you want to see 2 separate reviews. I just feel like I'm running out of time in terms of what I can create before winter comes. Today, Laura and I filmed an installation video of the new Ortlieb fork bags, just because they are a little complicated if you use the bands that they come with and you're not just bolting it on directly onto a bike. A little complicated. So we filmed that. I'm gonna do the pizza camera to that tomorrow. I did a video on what's it called? 3 cool but inexpensive bike gadgets, and that should be later this week. And also hopefully going to do my final review of the Hunt wheels. So yeah, Brian, 6 months of winter coming. I think we're gonna be joining Ryan in Southern California. Hopefully it won't be too smoky. But yeah, okay. So where's that brush? I think we've got it to the point where I can paint the cyclists. Let's see if there are any questions in here. So someone says, yeah, bamboo bikes. I've not ridden one. I was actually supposed to review the Calfee at one point, but that fell through. But nothing in the works. I will not be reviewing the All City Gorilla Monsoon. They offered for me to review it, but they don't have any in my size. Like I reviewed the Space Horse, and I had to review the size 55, and that was kind of a pain in the butt, literally. And I took that one on because there were big enough changes from the Gen 1 I reviewed, but in terms of the Gorilla Monsoon, there hasn't been any like big geometry changes, just the component group. So I think it would ride pretty similar, and I don't know, it just didn't seem, especially if it's going to be a size that I can't really enjoy or get a good grasp of, then it doesn't make sense to do. Okay, so we're going to go in here, paint the cyclist. This part's always really stressful because I feel like I'm going to screw it up. Move this over just a bit. Okay. What do you guys think of this camcorder action? You're amazing. Forget DSLRs. Everyone get a camcorder. Okay, sorry, I have to concentrate a little bit here. Always so stressful. It's really easy to screw it up at this part. It's a pretty good representation of the cyclist, I'd say. Yeah, speaking of Ryan's question, yeah, we used to have a childhood camcorder that definitely went on the shoulders. Oh, how times have changed. Okay, so we've got a cyclist there. I'm gonna wait until he or she dries, and then we'll do some highlights, and then we'll call it good. Yeah, I actually took, so I went to high school in Burbank, and if you guys know anything about Burbank, it's kind of the media center of Southern California, right next to NBC Studios, Disney Studios, all this stuff. But the school I went to, we had a media tract, and you know they were one of the first schools in the area to get an Avid non-NLE editing system. And if you've worked in the movie industry, you know Avids back then. This is in the 90s. Were huge machines. They took up like half a room. Our high school got a grant to get one of those for media class, and it came with 2 technicians, and their job was to teach us high school students how to edit video. And what was funny was, like, after the first week they did nothing because we picked up on it so quickly. But those were crazy because we were shooting on tapes and had to digitize, and it was just this whole crazy mess. Yeah, sweet. Well, thank you, Josepha, for watching. I'm glad that it helped you in your recovery. Don't definitely doing this because, you know, we're smoked in, and I know a lot of people are. Hopefully it's helping people pass some time when they can't ride bikes. Okay, so we've got our cyclists here. Now it's time for the fun part. Go zoom in. Not enough camcorders on YouTube. And wrong way. I'm gonna put in some highlights. And with these, I just like to dab it in with gouache. So gouache, if you don't know what gouache is, it's similar to watercolor, but it's an opaque watercolor, meaning that you can paint light over dark, as opposed to transparent watercolor, where you can't do that. You can only any light part in your painting is going to be the piece of paper. But with gouache, you can do light over dark, but you can also dilute it and get it transparent. But in this case, I'm just using white acrylic gouache, which is actually closer to acrylics. So it's going to be a super hot pop of white, and just let's give some separation for the cyclist. And usually the way I like to apply this is just straight out of the tube here, not even on the palette. It's a little dab on the head. Streak across the shoulders. Dot on the handlebar. Little dab where the saddle would be to suggest some light hitting the saddle. Maybe some light on the tire there. There, maybe on the foot. Whoops, a little too much. It's okay. All right. So bam, we've got a cyclist, a little bit more separation. Just add some contrast to that part of the painting. And I think, let's see if I can, the color's kind of messed up. Let me shut all this down here. And yeah, it's not too bad for an hour's painting. Again, this is going to a Patreon supporter that signed up to support at the $25 watercolor level. They do get original watercolor sketch, which I think is good value. It forces me to practice, but also gives some supporters some original artwork. So yeah, I think that's it. Are there any other last minute questions in the chat? Let me know, and then I will take it home. Do I ever worry about light fastness at all? I do. That's why all these paints, I splashed out and got the Daniel Smith Artist watercolor grade paints. And these are all really light fast. I don't use the pigments where there might be any, where they're not light fast, like a Prussian blue. I don't have that. So everything here is pretty light fast. But that is definitely a concern. So someone asked about the eraser. I use two. This one is just a regular kneaded eraser, and this one is it's kind of a cool retractable eraser. A little bit more fine-tuned erasing, you know. If you're gonna nerd out on art supplies, you might as well go all the way. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you guys like the painting. Yeah, happy little rocks. It's funny. I actually used to watch Bob Ross as a kid, and mostly fell asleep. But so that's a painting. You guys saw the reference photo again from the Brooklyn photographer Donald Ray, and yeah, definitely check out his work. And I think I'm gonna end it here. So thank you all for spending some time, for killing an hour. I know it's smoky outside in San Francisco, Sacramento, Seattle, Portland, all the places that we love to ride. So hopefully this has helped you Just kill a little time shooting the breeze, and maybe some of you painted along, and if you did, DM me the photo on Instagram. I don't know how likely that is, but it would be cool to see. So, all right, with all that, look for more fun videos this week and keep the supple side down.